All right, so you're looking to really master English quickly and effectively.
Right.
So let's dive into this.
Okay.
The secret sauce revealed in your sources.
Sure.
It's mastering the 4 key language skills. Listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Okay.
We'll unpack each of those skills.
Yeah.
Sprinkle in some practical tips.
Right.
Some relatable examples, and we'll basically create your roadmap to fluency.
It's interesting because those 4 skills aren't just for English.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're the foundation of any language.
Interesting.
You soak up language through listening, you communicate through speaking, you explore the world through reading, and express yourself through writing.
Okay.
So it's really the foundation of communication.
Gotcha. So listening.
Yeah.
It's the base. It's the way we naturally absorb language, just like babies do.
Right.
Before they can even utter a word.
Yeah.
Immersing yourself is key.
Yeah.
But there's a bit more to it than that, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Think about how parents instinctively talk to their kids.
Oh, okay.
Simpler words, they slow down.
Right.
They emphasize key sounds.
Yeah.
Well, that same principle applies to learning any language.
Interesting.
Peppa Pig.
Peppa Pig.
Yeah, with its clear pronunciation and simple storylines.
Okay.
Is a surprisingly effective tool for tuning your ears to the rhythm and sounds of English.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I see how that simplified input can really help with picking up the basics.
Right.
But what about those of us who maybe aren't into cartoons?
Yeah.
How do we immerse ourselves effectively?
Subtitles are your secret weapon.
Ooh.
Start with your favorite shows.
Okay.
Friends, Stranger Things,
Yeah.
anything that you enjoy.
Gotcha.
Watching with English subtitles lets you read and listen simultaneously,
Right.
reinforcing your comprehension.
Okay.
Then try watching the same scene without subtitles to test yourself.
So it's like training wheels for your ears.
Precisely.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it ties into the idea of active listening,
Oh, okay.
which goes beyond just passively hearing the words.
Okay.
You're mimicking pronunciation,
Right.
paying attention to tone,
Yeah.
and truly engaging with the nuances of spoken English.
Active listening. I like that.
Yeah.
It feels a lot more deliberate and purposeful than just having the TV on in the background.
Right.
Okay, so we've got listening down. But
Yeah.
speaking,
Yeah.
that's often the trickiest part, right?
Absolutely.
It's easy to feel self-conscious about making mistakes.
One technique that can help you overcome that fear and build confidence is shadowing.
Shadowing.
You listen to a sentence and you repeat it immediately, mimicking the speaker's tone and rhythm.
Oh, okay.
Want to try it?
Yeah.
Repeat after me.
Okay.
I'd like a cup of coffee, please.
I'd like a cup of coffee, please.
Hey, it's already making you think about your pronunciation more.
It is.
Yeah.
I like that.
And don't underestimate the power of everyday conversations, even if it's just talking to yourself.
Interesting.
Describe what you're doing as you go about your day.
Right.
I'm cooking dinner. I'm walking the dog.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps.
So it's about finding those little opportunities to practice speaking,
Precisely.
even if it feels a bit silly at first.
Exactly. And when it comes to speaking,
Yeah.
remember that learning sentence patterns is more effective than memorizing isolated words.
Interesting.
Let's revisit that coffee example.
All right.
Once you've got, I'd like a cup of coffee down, you can swap coffee for tea,
Right.
water,
Uh-huh.
a slice of cake.
Yeah.
Suddenly you've unlocked a flexible phrase for a variety of situations.
Okay, that's a really helpful way to think about it.
Yeah.
Instead of memorizing a whole dictionary,
Right.
you're learning the building blocks of sentences and how to adapt them.
Exactly.
So we've covered listening and speaking.
Yeah.
What about reading?
Reading is like a treasure trove for expanding your vocabulary, absorbing grammar naturally, and simply enjoying the learning process.
But I imagine it can be a bit overwhelming. Where do you even start?
It doesn't have to be intimidating.
Yeah.
Start with materials you genuinely enjoy.
Yeah.
Maybe news headlines, a favorite blog,
Yeah.
even social media posts.
Okay.
The key is to find content that keeps you engaged
Right.
and coming back for more.
So instead of forcing myself to read classic literature that I don't understand,
Right.
I could start with something more my speed.
Exactly. And here's a tip.
Okay.
Don't get bogged down by every unfamiliar word.
Right.
Use context clues to guess the meaning.
Oh,
So
interesting.
for example,
Okay.
the restaurant was crowded,
Yeah.
so we decided to leave. Even if you don't know crowded, you can infer it means something uncomfortable
Oh, okay.
or undesirable because they left.
Right. That's a great point. I do that all the time when I'm reading in my native language. Why not apply it to English as well?
Precisely, it's about activating those critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And becoming an active reader
Right.
Not just passively skimming the words. You can also make reading more interactive by underlining new words, writing them down, and even creating your own sentences with them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's about turning reading into an active learning experience.
Exactly.
Rather than just passively absorbing information.
Yeah.
It's listening, speaking, and reading covered. What about writing?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the one a lot of people struggle with.
Writing is a fantastic way to organize your thoughts,
Okay.
refine your grammar,
Right.
and flex those creative muscles in English.
Yeah.
And the best part is you can start small.
Okay.
Think about writing simple sentences about your daily routine.
All right.
I wake up at 7 a.m.
All right.
I eat breakfast at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, just those very basic things.
So it's not about writing the next great novel.
Exactly.
It's about getting comfortable expressing yourself in written English.
Precisely. And journaling in English is a great low pressure practice.
Oh,
It's a private space to experiment with the language without fear of judgment.
right.
You can also leverage language exchange apps
Oh, yeah.
to get feedback from native speakers and learn from your mistakes.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's all about embracing those mistakes as opportunities to learn.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the 4 skills. Listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Right.
They seem pretty interconnected, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Think of it like a web with each skill supporting and reinforcing the others.
Right.
When you listen, you're not just absorbing sounds.
Right.
You're also picking up on grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation.
Yeah.
When you speak, you're putting all of that knowledge into practice. And when you read,
Yeah.
you're expanding your vocabulary, seeing how grammar works in different contexts, which then feeds into your writing.
It's just like this amazing cycle
Is.
of learning and reinforcement.
Absolutely.
The more you practice each skill, the stronger that web becomes.
Yeah.
Leading to greater fluency overall.
Right.
But how do we make sure we're actually practicing effectively?
That's where motivation and goal setting come in.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
Motivation and goal setting.
We'll dive into those crucial aspects in the next part of our deep dive.
Awesome. I'm excited to learn more about that.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. You know, it's fascinating how we often box in language learning as this rigid,
Right.
classroom-only activity.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's happening around us all the time.
That's so true. When you start seeing everyday moments
Yeah.
as learning opportunities,
Right.
it really does open up a whole new world.
Think about it. Every time you watch a movie,
Yeah.
listen to music, or even just glance at a menu,
Right.
you're engaging with English in some way.
It's like this constant stream of input, subtly shaping your understanding of the language.
And it doesn't have to be passive.
Okay.
You can turn those everyday encounters into active learning experiences.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
How do we make that happen?
Let's say you're watching a movie. Instead of just following the plot, pay attention to how the characters use certain phrases,
Right.
the tone they convey,
Yeah.
the rhythm of their speech.
So I'm not just watching for entertainment.
Right.
I'm actively analyzing how the language is being used.
Precisely. And you can apply the same principle to music.
Oh, okay.
Listen to the lyrics,
Yeah.
try to sing along. Notice how the words are pronounced and how they flow together.
It's like training your ear
Exactly.
to pick up on those subtle nuances that make a language come alive.
Fluency isn't just about knowing grammar rules
Right.
or having a massive vocabulary. It's about using the language naturally and effortlessly like a native speaker,
Right. It's about feeling comfortable and confident.
expressing yourself no matter the situation.
And the more you expose yourself to the language
Yeah.
in these authentic contexts,
Right.
the more comfortable you'll become.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the individual skills, listening, speaking, reading, writing.
Right.
But how do they all work together to create that fluency we're aiming for?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Think of it like a web,
Right?
with each skill interconnected and reinforcing the others.
So when I'm listening to English,
Yeah.
I'm not just absorbing sounds.
Right.
I'm also picking up on grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation.
Exactly. And when you speak, you're putting all that knowledge into practice,
Right.
solidifying it in your mind.
And reading expands my vocabulary.
Yes.
Showing me how grammar is used in different contexts.
Which in turn informs your writing
Oh, okay.
as you begin to use those new words and structures in your own work.
It's a beautiful cycle
Absolutely.
of learning and reinforcement. And the more you engage in each of these skills, the stronger those connections become, leading to greater fluency and overall mastery of the language.
It's like working out a muscle.
Yeah.
Making it stronger and more resilient with each exercise.
Precisely. And just like with any workout, consistency is key.
Okay.
Even dedicating a few minutes each day to each skill can make a huge difference over time.
So don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight.
Right.
Language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
And the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
I like that.
Enjoy the process.
Yeah.
Embrace the challenges and celebrate those small victories along the way. After all, there's something incredibly rewarding about being able to communicate in another language.
It's true. Connecting with people from different cultures.
Absolutely.
Expanding your horizons. Those are amazing benefits.
It opens up a whole world of possibilities, both personally and professionally.
And who knows, maybe one day our listener will be hosting their own podcast in English.
That would be a testament to the power of consistent practice and a positive mindset.
Okay, so we've covered the fundamentals of the 4 skills.
Yeah.
The importance of everyday learning and the power of consistency.
Right.
But there's one crucial piece we haven't touched on yet.
And that is?
Motivation.
Yes.
The fuel that keeps us going. Especially when things get tough.
Right.
And of course, setting realistic goals.
Yeah.
So we don't get overwhelmed.
Ah, yes. Motivation and goal setting, the compass and map for our language learning journey.
I like that.
We'll dive into those critical aspects after a quick break. Stay tuned.
So we're back, ready to unpack the power of motivation and goal setting in your English learning journey.
Right.
You know, we've all hit those walls where the motivation takes a nosedive.
For sure.
How do we keep the fire burning?
What's fascinating here is that motivation isn't this magical thing that appears. It's something you actively cultivate and nurture.
Right.
It all starts with connecting to your why.
Your why.
Yeah.
Okay, so dig deep. Why are you learning English?
Right.
What doors will it open?
Yeah.
Is it to travel the world? Connect with new people? Boost your career?
Yeah.
Or simply enjoy those books and movies in their original form?
Having a strong why is like your secret weapon.
Oh, okay.
When doubt or frustration creep in, it's easy to get caught up in the daily grind of studying and lose sight of the bigger picture.
So it's like having a North Star.
Exactly.
Guiding you even when the path gets a bit rocky.
Yeah.
Speaking of navigating that path, how about setting goals?
Right.
It's tempting to aim for fluency in a few months.
Yeah.
But isn't that setting yourself up for a crash landing?
Absolutely. Setting smaller, achievable goals is key to maintaining momentum and celebrating those wins along the way. Instead of, I want to be fluent in 6 months. Break it down. Maybe it's, I want to comfortably chat about my hobbies, or I want to read a short story without a dictionary.
Right. So those smaller victories fuel the motivation to keep going.
Exactly.
And it makes the whole process less intimidating.
For sure.
But even with smaller goals, we need to be honest about our time.
Exactly. How much time can you realistically dedicate to learning each week?
Right.
Be specific. Create a schedule that works for you and stick to it. Consistency trumps intensity when it comes to language learning.
So 30 minutes a day is better than cramming for 3 hours once a week.
Exactly.
It's like those little deposits in a savings account.
Right.
They add up over time.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
It's fascinating how much progress you can make with consistent effort, even if it's just a little bit each day.
Right.
And don't forget to celebrate those milestones.
Oh, okay.
Acknowledge your progress. Reward yourself.
Yeah.
Let those successes fuel your motivation.
It's like giving yourself a little pat on the back and saying, hey, I'm doing this.
Exactly.
I'm moving forward. And at the end of the day, it's important to remember that the journey of learning English is just as important as the destination.
Right.
Have fun with it.
Couldn't agree more. So there you have it.
Okay.
We've explored the 4 essential skills, the power of finding those everyday learning opportunities, and the vital roles of motivation and goal setting.
Yeah.
You've now got the tools, the insights and inspiration to unlock your full language potential.
Awesome.
It's time to define your why, set those realistic goals, and get to work.
So to wrap things up, for anyone listening who wants to master English quickly and effectively, remember it all comes down to mastering those 4 key skills.
Right.
Listening, speaking, reading, and writing.
Yeah.
And as we've learned today, the best way to tackle these skills is to find a method that works for you. Stay motivated by connecting to your personal why. And don't forget to celebrate those small wins along the way.
Yeah, and remember, consistency is key.
Right.
Keep practicing, keep learning.
Absolutely.
And most importantly, have fun with it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of English language learning.
It was my pleasure.
We'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another deep dive with us. So today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting.
Yeah, this should be fun.
Yeah. Basically, we're going to be going over the top 21 most frequently used words in the English language.
Yeah, and it's really amazing how such a small set of words can make up like the foundation for like daily conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And, whether you're a beginner or, you consider yourself more advanced, understanding these words and how to use them effectively, is really going to help you sound more fluent, more natural. So joining me today to, help us unpack all of this and really give us some good insights is...
Hi, everyone.
So I'm really excited to jump into this with you. So I guess to start off, our source has broken down these 21 words into different categories.
Right.
So we've got verbs and we've got conversational words and we've got nouns and adjectives. So I figure, why don't we just go in order? Verbs, those are like the action words, right? The workhorses of the sentence. So let's start there.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So the first one on the list is go. And, I think most people, when they think about go, they're thinking, it's about like physical movement.
Right. Like I go to the store.
Right. Exactly.
But, it can also indicate like a change of state. Like the lights went out or even like a progression of time, like as the years go by.
That's so true. I never really thought about like all the different ways that we use that one little word go. All right. What about get? That one seems even more, multifaceted.
Yeah, get is a very interesting one, because it often implies a process or a change of state that's sort of outside of your direct control.
Oh, okay.
So you think about phrases like get sick or get lost. It's like something is happening to you. It's not like you're directly making it happen.
Right. It's like something's being done to you.
Exactly.
But then on the other hand, you have phrases like get rich or get ahead.
Right.
And those have a very different connotation.
Yeah.
Right. It's much more like intentional, almost aspirational.
Yeah, it's like get reflects our relationship with change itself, whether it's something we're actively pursuing or something that's kind of being imposed upon us.
That's so interesting. I like that a lot. Okay, so moving right along. Next up we have do. And this one always feels to me like the ultimate multitasker.
Definitely.
You can do so many things.
Absolutely. It's amazing how often do just pops up in our sentences. From describing our jobs, like what do you do,
right,
to expressing obligations, I have to do my homework. It really is like the Swiss Army knife of verbs.
Yeah, and it plays such a key role in questions too. Do you like pizza? Did you see that movie? Like it's just, it makes the question a question.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've had go, we've had get, we've had do. What about have?
Oh, have. That's another one that's surprisly versatile.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we use it for possession. I have a car.
Right.
But we also use it for experiences. I had a great time. And then, all those idioms too. Have a nice day. Have a good one. These are just ingrained into our everyday conversations.
Yeah, and I think have really highlights how so much of language is really about more than just, the literal meaning. It's about, creating a feeling or, connecting with someone on a social level.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's tackle make. I feel like this is one I use constantly. Make dinner, make a decision, make a mistake. It's all about like creating something or causing something to happen.
Yes.
But then there's also this element of obligation sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like I made him apologize.
Exactly. Make implies that you're kind of bringing something into being. You're causing something to happen. And you're right about the obligation aspect too. It can be used to express, influence or even a sense of like responsibility for something.
Well, like you're the driving force behind whatever is happening.
Exactly.
Okay. And last but not least on our list of verbs, we have take.
Take. Now this is an interesting one because take often involves a sense of action combined with possession or control. So, think about phrases like take a break, take a seat, take charge.
Right. It's like you're asserting yourself in some way, whether you're taking something for yourself or taking control of a situation.
Exactly.
So, okay, we've got go get, do, have, make, and take. That is a lot of verbal power packed into 6 little words.
It really is. It's amazing how much we can express with just the small set of verbs.
Okay, so we've covered the verbs. Now let's move on to those little words that I like to think of as kind of like the glue that holds our conversations together. You know, those little conversational connectors?
Right.
So things like hi and bye and thanks and sorry. I mean, how deep can we really go with these?
You might be surprised. You know, even these seemingly simple expressions play a really vital role in how we interact with each other.
Okay.
For example, hi and hello, they're not just greetings. You know, they signal that you're open to communication and connection.
Oh, so it's like setting the tone right from the start, like you're extending an invitation to engage in a conversation.
Exactly.
Okay, and then on the flip side, we have bye.
Right, which signals, you know, closure. It marks the end of the conversation, and, you know, it allows us to transition smoothly out of the interaction.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered greeting and departing, but what about those little words that add a touch of, you know, politeness and gratitude to our interactions?
You mean thanks and sorry?
Exactly.
Ah, yes. Those are powerful tools. They help us maintain social harmony, and they help us, you know, navigate those little bumps in the road of human interaction.
Yeah. Thanks acknowledges a favor, right, or a kind gesture, and it, you know, reinforces those positive interactions that we have. And sorry is all about taking responsibility for something, you know, smoothing over those mistakes and showing empathy.
Exactly. They're subtle, but they're really essential for building good relationships.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how we often, you know, modify these words for emphasis, like saying thanks a lot. It carries a lot more weight than a simple thanks.
Oh, definitely.
Or, I'm so sorry versus just sorry. It adds that extra layer of sincerity.
Exactly. These little nuances can make a big difference.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've explored 6 key verbs and 4 of these essential conversational words.
We have.
Are you starting to see the power of these seemingly simple words?
Oh, absolutely.
It's like we're peeling back the layers and discovering all this like hidden depth to language.
I agree.
All right, so I think we're ready to tackle our next category, which is nouns. So where do we even begin with this?
Well, our source has chosen a handful of nouns that represent like fundamental concepts, you know, the building blocks of how we understand the world.
Okay.
So let's start with time.
Okay, time.
Such a basic concept, yet it governs so much of our lives.
Right. We're constantly thinking of time. What time is it? Do we have enough time? It's like this invisible force shaping our days.
Right. And you know, the source actually delves into some pretty deep questions about time.
Oh, really?
Like, how do different cultures perceive time? What's the relationship between time and memory? It's fascinating stuff.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. All right, so alongside time, we have day, which seems, you know, very ordinary. But, you know, it really does mark the rhythm of our lives. Have a good day. It's a brand new day.
Right. And day can also refer to like a specific period in history, like back in the day or the day the music died. It connects us to this flow of time, both personal and historical.
Wow, I like that. Okay, what's next?
Next up is thing, which I have to admit always makes me chuckle a little bit.
Why is that?
Well, it's like the ultimate catch-all word, you know, for when our vocabulary fails us.
Oh, yeah. It's like the ultimate placeholder. What's that thing over there? The thing is, but you know, it's actually really effective at conveying meaning, even when we can't come up with like a more specific word.
Right. It shows that communication isn't always about, you know, perfect grammar or an extensive vocabulary. It's about getting your message across. And sometimes thing does the job perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So speaking of conveying meaning, we've got place next on our list. It seems like a pretty straightforward word, but I'm sure there's more to it than meets the eye.
There is. You know, place isn't just about physical location. It can also refer to like a position in a sequence, like take your place in line, or even a state of mind, like feeling out of place. It's a word that helps us navigate the world in all sorts of ways.
Right. It's like place isn't just about where we are physically, but also about how we fit in.
Exactly.
And how we make sense of our surroundings.
Exactly.
Okay. And then finally we have people, which, I mean, it's like, it seems so obvious, but you know, when you think about it, people are really what makes the world go round, right?
That's true.
People represents our shared humanity.
Right.
That's the foundation of society and relationships and, you know, everything that makes us human.
It's the word that reminds us we're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've explored verbs, conversational connectors, and now nouns. I'm already feeling like I have a whole new appreciation for the power of these everyday words. But before we jump into adjectives, I'm curious, what's standing out to you so far?
Honestly, I think what struck me the most is how much depth and nuance there is, even in the simplest words. You know, we use them all the time, but we don't often stop and think about how they work.
Yeah. It's like we're taking them for granted.
Totally.
But I think this deep dive is really helping us to, kind of slow down and appreciate the intricacies of these words that we usually just take for granted.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So adjectives, I think we're ready.
Let's do it. You know, it's funny how we can go through like our whole lives using these words and never really stop to think about them.
Right. It's true. But that's, I think, what makes this deep dive so interesting.
Yeah.
It's like we're forced to slow down and actually like appreciate these things that we usually just, take for granted.
Yeah.
So, last we left off, we were about to delve into the world of adjectives. So are you ready to add some color to our conversation?
Absolutely. Adjectives are what bring our language to life.
Yeah, they do.
They paint pictures in our minds, they evoke emotions, and they help us make sense of the world.
I love that. So true. And they add, that extra layer of detail that just makes our communication so much richer. Okay, so why don't we start with good? I feel like that's like the most basic adjective in the English language.
It really is. Good is our go-to word for expressing approval or satisfaction or, just like the absence of anything negative.
Right.
It's a wonderfully versatile word.
It is.
You can use it for pretty much anything.
I've noticed that good is often used as kind of a conversational placeholder, especially when we're trying to be polite. Or avoid being too critical. Like, oh, that's a good point. Even if you don't really agree with what the person is saying.
Right. It's like a way of maintaining harmony.
Yeah.
Smoothing over those potential disagreements or awkward moments.
Right. Okay, so good is all about positivity and agreeableness. What about new? What kind of energy does new bring?
New is all about excitement, possibility, a sense of change. It draws our attention to something fresh, something that stands out from the ordinary.
Right.
Think about like getting a new phone or starting a new job.
Right.
There's that element of curiosity and intrigue.
There is. It makes you want to learn more to explore. And it can also be a really powerful marketing tool.
Right.
New and improved, the latest and greatest.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's like designed to pique our interest.
Absolutely. New really taps into that human desire for novelty and fascination with progress.
Yeah. But then on the other hand, new can also highlight a lack of experience.
That's true.
Like new to the job or a new driver.
Right.
It implies a learning curve.
Definitely.
So it's like a double-edged sword.
Right.
Right. It can be exhilarating,
right,
but it can also be intimidating.
Depending on the context.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered good and new. Ready to wrap things up with happy.
Let's do it. Happy is such a fundamental human emotion.
It is.
It resonates across cultures. It's the language of joy and contentment and well-being.
Yeah, and it's amazing how contagious happiness can be. Like when someone greets you with a genuine smile and I say good morning, it can like brighten your whole day.
It's true. It's like this ripple effect.
Yeah.
Spreading positivity.
And happy isn't just about those fleeting moments of joy either.
Right.
It's about that deeper sense of fulfillment.
Yeah, that sense of purpose.
Yeah. I think that's what makes happy is such a powerful word. It encompasses such a, wide spectrum of positive emotions.
I agree.
Okay, so we've tackled adjectives, but I want to circle back to something you said earlier about how adjectives can paint pictures in our minds and evoke emotions. Do you think there's a connection between these simple adjectives and how we experience the world?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think the answer is yes. The words we use shape how we see things. They provide the framework for how we understand and interpret our experiences.
So, for example, if we're constantly using negative adjectives to describe ourselves or the world around us, we might actually start to see things more negatively.
Exactly. The language we use becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow.
It influences our thoughts, our emotions, and ultimately our actions.
That's a powerful reminder to be mindful of the words we choose.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Verbs, conversational connectors, nouns, adjectives.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we can learn from just 21 words.
It really is.
And we haven't even touched on phrasal verbs yet.
Oh, yes.
So those are next on our list. And I think you'll be surprised by how much they add to the richness and complexity of the language.
I think so too.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Bring on the phrasal verbs. All right, so welcome back to the deep dive. We've already covered so much.
Yeah.
But before the break, you mentioned phrasal verbs. What are those exactly, and why are they so important?
So phrasal verbs are basically like these combinations of a verb and another word, usually like a preposition or an adverb. And when you put them together, they create a totally new meaning.
Okay, so like give me an example.
Okay, so let's take the verb look. Pretty straightforward word, right? But when you start adding prepositions like up after or into, you get phrasal verbs with completely different meanings. So like look up means to search for information.
Right.
Look after means to take care of someone. And look into means to investigate something.
Wow, you're right.
So you see how just a little tweak can make our language so much more expressive.
Yeah, absolutely. So are phrasal verbs just about like adding more words to our vocabulary?
It's more than just adding words. It's about nuance. It's about idiom. You know, phrasal verbs capture these subtle shades of meaning that would be really hard to express otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
And they make your English sound much more natural, more like a native speaker.
So if they're so nuanced, how do we even begin to like learn all of them?
Well, the good news is you don't have to learn every single phrasal verb out there.
Yeah.
You know, just focus on the most common ones, the ones that come up a lot in everyday conversations.
Okay, that makes sense.
And pay attention to the context, you know, because phrasal verbs can have different meanings depending on the situation.
Right.
So try to learn them in like real life examples, not just from lists.
So like instead of just memorizing look up, I should try to remember it in a sentence. Like I need to look at the meaning of this word.
Exactly. Because then you're associating the phrasal verb with a specific meaning and a specific usage.
That's really helpful.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to experiment.
Okay.
The best way to learn phrasal verbs is to actually use them. Start incorporating them into your conversations, even if you're not 100% sure you're using them correctly.
So what if I make a mistake?
You know, making mistakes is part of the learning process. Even native speakers make mistakes with phrasal verbs all the time.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
So don't worry too much about it. Just practice and you'll get more comfortable over time.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about verbs, conversational connectors, nouns, adjectives, and now phrasal verbs. It's pretty amazing how much we can learn from just 21 words.
It really is. I think it just goes to show the power of language.
Yeah.
And how these simple building blocks can be used to express so many different things.
So what's like the main takeaway you hope listeners will, walk away with from this deep dive?
I think the most important thing to remember is that fluency isn't about memorizing a huge vocabulary or mastering all the grammar rules. It's about understanding the basic principles of how language works, and then using those principles to communicate effectively.
So it's not about quantity, it's about quality.
Exactly. By focusing on these 21 words, you're not just learning vocabulary, you're gaining a deeper understanding of how English works.
I love that.
Yeah.
So is there anything you'd like to challenge our listeners to do after this deep dive?
I would challenge them to really pay attention to how these 21 words are being used all around them. Listen to conversations, read books and articles, and see if you can notice how these words are like the threads that hold everything together.
I like that. It's like a treasure hunt.
It is.
And the more you find, the better you'll become at understanding and speaking the language.
Exactly.
Well, this has been such an eye-opening deep dive for me. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too.
And I definitely have a new appreciation for these words that we use every day. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey. And thanks to all of you for listening. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
All right. Want to boost those everyday English skills? We're taking a deep dive into this real-life conversation script you sent us.
Oh, this looks great. Yeah, practical stuff like ordering a coffee or navigating the supermarket, even asking for directions, which can be tricky.
Exactly. No more feeling lost for words.
I think what's really neat about this script is it goes beyond just the grammar. It gives you the actual vocabulary you'll use like in real conversations. I think that's what can really help with confidence.
For sure. Okay, let's jump right in, shall we? First scenario, the coffee shop. I mean, we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes even ordering a latte can feel kind of intimidating if you're not feeling super confident with your English.
Absolutely. And this script breaks it down so well for beginners. It focuses on those like super essential phrases like, what size would you like? Or anything else. They might seem basic, but it's like once you've got those down, it makes the whole interaction so much smoother.
It even emphasizes, like even those things we take for granted, like saying please and thank you. It's amazing how much those little courtesies can really like improve any interaction, even just grabbing a coffee.
Oh, totally. It's like a little bit of social lubricant, right?
Yeah.
And this script even has like a practice scenario where someone orders a latte instead of a cappuccino. So you're getting comfortable with those core vocabulary words.
Now let's shift gears a bit and head to the supermarket. I think for English language learners, the grocery store can be a whole new world, like aisles and sections and shelves, all those specific terms.
It can be so overwhelming. This script does such a good job of giving you the vocabulary you need to navigate that world, like introducing terms like aisles, dairy section, top shelf, Imagine you can walk into a store and actually find what you need.
And I love that it even has an example about gluten-free bread. You're learning practical vocabulary, but you're also, being introduced to words related to like dietary needs, which is super helpful in real life these days.
Yeah. Plus, it's not just telling you what the words mean. It gives you a chance to practice using them. There's this scenario where someone's looking for sugar-free cereal, and the shop assistant actually helps them find it. So you see those words in action.
Okay, ready for a challenge. The script also tackles asking for directions, which I think we can all agree can be a little nerve-wracking, even for more experienced English speakers sometimes.
Oh, for sure. And this is where clear communication is so important. Words like nearest, blocks, entrance can really make all the difference in actually getting to where you need to go. And this script, it gives you those exact phrases.
I love that they even include a safety tip. Be careful crossing the main road. Because, it's not just about language, right? It's about, equipping you with the actual knowledge you need to navigate a new city or a new place.
Exactly. And they bring it all to life with a practice scenario. Like, imagine you're a traveler, you're trying to find the park, and this friendly local gives you clear, easy to understand directions. It helps you picture yourself actually using those phrases.
So far, I think we can agree this script is proving to be, a really good resource for building practical English skills. And it's not just about throwing information at you. It's about actually giving you the vocabulary and the confidence to use it.
Like having a toolbox.
Yeah.
And it's filled with all the right words and phrases for those, like really common everyday interactions. And I think the best part is it encourages you to actually take those tools and use them in your daily life.
Oh, but wait, there's more. This real life conversation script doesn't just stop there. It actually goes a step further, and it reinforces everything you've learned to help you really put those new phrases into practice. We're going to unpack that exciting part after a quick break.
One thing I really like about this script is how it emphasizes actually practicing. It's not just about, reading and memorizing. It's about actively using the language.
Yeah.
And that's where this recap and practice section comes in. It's brilliant, really.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is where it gets fun. Think of it like a workout, but for your English. This section takes everything we've talked about and helps you, really get it into your system.
Exactly. And it's so well organized because it's broken down by skill level.
Yeah.
So if you're just starting out, you can focus on the basics, ordering a coffee, asking for directions, things like, I'd like a latte, please, or where can I find the bread aisle? Those are your building blocks.
And as you get more comfortable, they introduce more slightly more complex phrases for the intermediate learners. So you can start saying things like, do you have any dairy-free milk? Or the gluten-free section is on the top shelf.
What I think is so clever here is that they encourage you to actually say these phrases out loud. It's not just about reading them in your head. You gotta get your mouth moving, get your brain used to forming the words. It's like muscle memory for English.
Totally. It reminds me of when I was learning Spanish. It wasn't until I started actually speaking it regularly that I really started to get it. And the script really seems to understand that.
Oh, absolutely. And for the advanced learners, they kick things up a notch. They have you navigating a busy city. Think about phrases like, could you help me find the subway entrance? Or walk 2 blocks, then turn left. Now you're really in the zone.
I love how they have you picturing these scenarios. You can really imagine yourself in a busy city trying to find your way. It makes it so much more, real, memorable.
And let's not forget about that conclusion and call to action section. It's like that final push, It reminds you how far you've come and encourages you to keep going.
It's so important to celebrate those little wins along the way, right? This section really highlights the fact that you've just mastered 3 incredibly common situations. Ordering coffee, navigating the supermarket, asking for directions, and these are things you'll use all the time.
And they even encourage you to, engage with the material. Leave a comment, subscribe, share with your friends. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. It's like building a community of learners. It's so motivating. And on that note, I think it's a good time to wrap up this part of our deep dive. We've seen how this script can really help you improve your everyday English, but the real key is to actually use it. Get out there and practice. All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into this real-life conversation script. You know, it's really amazing how it breaks down those everyday interactions and gives you the tools to really handle them confidently.
It does, right? And what's so impressive is how it goes beyond just vocabulary. It gives you the context, and emphasizes practice, encourages active learning, which I think are all so essential for actually mastering a language.
It's like we've been given this treasure map, and now we're standing at the edge of the island, ready to dig for those linguistic gems. So as we get ready to embark on this adventure, what are some key takeaways, would you say, that our listeners should keep in mind? What advice would you give as they start using this script?
Well, I'd say, first and foremost, remember that learning a language, it's a journey. It's not a destination. You're going to hit bumps along the way. You're going to get frustrated sometimes. There might even be moments when you feel like giving up. But just keep practicing, keep exploring, and celebrate those little victories. This script is a fantastic starting point, but the real magic happens when you take those tools and you actually start using them in your daily life.
It's like they say, the only way to learn to swim is to get in the water, right? This script gives you the floaties. Now it's time to jump in and start splashing around. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how you learn.
And here's a thought I find really helpful. Think of it like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So don't be afraid to push yourself a little. Try new things. Step outside your comfort zone a bit. Every conversation, every interaction is a chance to flex those English muscles.
I love that. It's a reminder that fluency isn't something that just happens overnight. It's something you build up over time with consistent effort. And this script gives you a great workout routine for those English muscles.
Now, we've talked a lot about the specific scenarios in this script. The coffee shop, the supermarket, asking for directions. But think about all those other situations you encounter every day.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Ordering food at a restaurant, making a doctor's appointment, or even just chatting with colleagues at work. Or even striking up a conversation with, someone you meet on the street.
This script has given us a framework. But how can our listeners apply these same principles to those other situations? How do they branch out and expand their conversational repertoire?
That's a great question. Any tips?
I think one of the most valuable skills you can develop is the ability to observe. Pay attention to how native speakers express themselves. Listen to the phrases they use, the way they structure their sentences, the rhythm and intonation. You're kind of like a language detective, gathering clues and insights that you can then incorporate into your own speaking.
So it's like immersing yourself in the language. Even if you're not, physically in an English-speaking environment, you could watch movies, you could listen to podcasts, or even just, eavesdrop on conversations in a non-creepy way, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try out those new phrases. Yeah. Even if you're, not 100% sure you're using them perfectly, the more you use them, the more natural they become. And hey, remember, every mistake is a learning opportunity.
It's about embracing that trial and error, right? And not being afraid to put yourself out there, have fun with the language, enjoy the journey.
And as you get more comfortable, push yourself further. Challenge yourself to have longer conversations. Explore new topics.
Yeah.
This script's giving you that foundation, but now it's time to build on it and create your own real-life conversations.
Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive into this script, and we really hope our listeners feel, empowered to take their English skills to that next level. Remember, keep practicing, keep exploring, and most importantly, have fun.
Until next time, keep those English muscles flexed. All right, let's unlock a superpower everybody uses every day. I mean, who doesn't use language?
You got that right.
And specifically today, we're diving deep into the everyday kind of language, the words and phrases we use to describe our daily routines, like getting ready for work or school, that kind of thing.
It's really interesting how much we kind of give ourselves away just by the way we talk about even something as simple as brushing our teeth.
Right. And the source material that we're looking at today really gets that. It breaks down this daily routine vocabulary by different skill levels, from beginner to advanced, but it goes way deeper than that. It shows how the words we choose actually reflect our mindset and even where we're at with our fluency, right?
Exactly. Just think about it for a second. Someone who's just starting out learning English might say, I eat breakfast.
Yeah.
But as they get more comfortable, more fluent, that might change to I whip up a quick breakfast before hitting the gym.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same action, but the language is so much more vivid and really tells a story.
And that's what really struck me too, like the way this source material organizes everything around morning, afternoon, and evening routines. It's like a roadmap of how our language actually changes throughout the day, you know?
Such a good point. Yeah, it's so smart. I mean, for example, eat lunch is pretty basic, but if you bump that up to network over lunch, that brings a whole different level of intentionality to the table.
It does. It really does. Like the words themselves are like clues about how we approach different parts of our day, you know?
Oh, sure.
So let's get started with those morning routines, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the shifts we see in the language? We go from like a beginner level all the way up to, you know, a more advanced level.
Well, I think when you're starting out, when you're at the beginner level, it's all about just those really essential verbs. Right?
Yeah.
Things like wake up, get dressed, have breakfast, those sorts of things. I mean, it's functional, gets the message across, but doesn't really tell us much about the person or their experience, right?
Totally. It's just like the bare minimum. It's like you're filling out a form at the doctor's office.
Exactly.
But then when we get to the intermediate level, that's where we start to see a little more personality come through. Right?
For sure.
Instead of brush teeth, maybe it's brush teeth for 2 minutes or use whitening toothpaste. All of a sudden we get some detail.
Exactly. And those little like additions can reveal a lot about somebody, right? About their priorities, their habits. Are they really all about efficiency or are they kind of more detail oriented? The language really gives us clues.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, but now we're getting to the part that I got really excited about, like the advanced vocabulary. You know, we start to see phrases like start the day on the right foot, or even recharge with a mindful morning routine. Now it's not just about what you're doing, but the feeling behind it, the intention. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And recharge is such a powerful word to use here because it really suggests that a morning routine isn't just a list of tasks to get through, but it's a way to renew your energy, you know? It's a source of energy.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And, you know, digging a little deeper here, like start the day on the right foot. It's not just some random saying.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That actually has roots going all the way back to ancient Roman superstition.
Really?
Stepping out with your right foot first was good luck back then.
Wow. That's so cool. See, even simple phrases, they can have these amazing historical and cultural layers, you know?
It makes you wonder if those ancient Romans, did they have their own version of like a power breakfast or something like that?
Probably. Maybe. Yeah. It's so interesting to think about how language has evolved and adapted over time.
But some core concepts, some things just never change, right?
That's true.
Like the desire for a good start to your day, that's a universal thing, you know?
Absolutely. That's something really important to keep in mind as we go through all these routines. It's not just about the individual, but how the words reflect, you know, broader cultural values.
That's a good question. Now I want to analyze everything I say.
Right. Me too.
Okay. Before we go totally meta here, let's move on to the afternoon routines. What kind of linguistic gems are waiting for us there?
Well, it's interesting to see how the focus shifts as the day goes on, right?
Yeah.
So in the morning, it's all about getting ready, getting energized. And then in the afternoon, the language starts to reflect how we interact with the world, especially in work or professional settings.
Right. It's like we go from eat lunch to grab a quick bite to, like you said, network during lunch.
Exactly. And it's like the pace picks up, the stakes get higher.
Yeah.
You know?
It's almost like a video game or something.
Yeah,
you know?
is it?
Level up.
That's a great analogy because it shows how our language has to adapt to our changing roles, the different contexts we find ourselves in.
It does.
Even eating is different. It becomes more strategic.
Totally. You're not just eating to live, you're eating to win. But, you know, there's also this interesting thread of recharging that kind of runs through all the afternoon routines.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like phrases such as take a power nap or recharge with a walk. So we know it's important to keep that energy going, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
It suggests that we need these intentional breaks.
Right.
It's not just about pushing through, you know?
Right.
You gotta take a break, you know what I mean?
I think about my own afternoons and how often I say, I'm going to power through this afternoon slump.
Yeah.
But what I really need is to recharge.
It's like there's this tension between what we feel like we should be doing and then what we actually need to do to thrive.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
And the language helps us kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you think about your afternoon routine, what are some of the phrases that come to mind?
Well, I definitely catch myself saying catch up on emails way more than I should. I wish I could get rid of that one. But I also try to say, find my flow when I'm working on a project, you know?
Yeah.
It's like acknowledging that productivity isn't always linear. Sometimes you have to find it.
That's a good one. Find my flow. I like that. So that kind of brings us to a crucial question here. How do these afternoon routines, how do they set us up for a successful evening?
That's a really good question. And actually, I'm already noticing some interesting connections between the way we talk about recharging in the afternoon and the way we describe how we wind down in the evening, you know?
Right.
It's almost like a mirror image. In the afternoon, we're trying to keep that energy up, but then in the evening, it's all about how to restore it. The language totally reflects that shift.
Okay, so let's get into those evening routines. How does the language evolve as we get closer to bedtime? And what does that tell us about, you know, what really matters to us, our priorities and mindsets?
Well, like we saw before, at the beginner level, it's all about those familiar actions. Have dinner, watch TV, go to bed. It's all really simple and straightforward, and it's all about our basic needs, right?
Totally. It's like hitting the reset button after a long day.
Yeah.
But when we move up to the intermediate level, things start to get a little more intentional.
Yeah.
We see phrases like spend time with family or read a book or even practice a hobby, you know?
Yeah, that's a really cool shift. It's like now there's this awareness of nurturing our relationships and spending time doing things that bring us joy and pursuing our passions.
Right.
It's about creating a more balanced, you know, fulfilling life.
Yeah, so I bet those advanced speakers, they take that even further, right? What kind of language do we see when people are really intentional with those evening routines?
Yeah, you're totally right. Instead of just saying watching TV, you might hear something like disconnect from screens or engage in mindful relaxation.
Yeah.
And instead of just going to bed, it's prepare for a restful sleep. You know, it's taking those basic actions to a whole new level.
I love that.
Yeah.
Like the language is guiding us to this more intentional and mindful way of ending our day.
Exactly. And that brings us to a really interesting question. How does the language we use to describe our evening routines, how does that affect how we sleep and even our overall well-being?
That is a good question. It's something I'm going to be thinking about a lot, I think, as we go through this deep dive. But for now, let's take a closer look at those advanced phrases for our evening routines, because I am so intrigued by that contrast between disconnect from screens and engage in mindful relaxation. What do you think the difference is there? Like, what's the significance of those two things?
Yeah, it's such a subtle but powerful shift. I think the disconnect from screens is kind of acknowledging that technology can really mess with our sleep. It overstimulates us.
Right.
And it's like saying that rest is more important. We need to create boundaries, you know?
Yeah.
And then engage in mindful relaxation takes it even further. You're not just avoiding things, you're creating a sense of calm, you're being present. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that shows a deeper understanding of the connection between our mind and body.
You know, it's funny. I'm feeling more relaxed just thinking about these phrases right now.
I know, me too. It's crazy how much of an impact language has on us, you know?
Totally.
It reminds us that even little changes in the words we use can make a huge difference.
This is making me rethink how I talk about my own evening routine, for sure.
Yeah.
But before we go down that road, let's give our listeners a chance to think about this, you know?
Yeah, let's take a breath here. Think about your own evenings, right? What are some of the phrases you use to talk about how you wind down, you know? Do you find yourself using those words that are more mindful, more intentional, or are you more focused on just checking things off your to-do list?
That's a really interesting thing to think about because, you know, sometimes the words we use, they reveal more about us than we think. That's what's so cool about this deep dive into this vocabulary. It's not just about learning new words, it's about understanding ourselves and how we navigate the world, right?
Exactly. It's really amazing how much our language changes as we become more fluent, you know?
Yeah, totally. It's like leveling up in a video game or something.
Right.
Instead of getting new armor, you're getting new ways to express yourself.
Exactly. And it's not just about sounding fancier or something.
Right. It's not about trying to impress people.
Yeah, it's about, you know, being able to really get your thoughts and feelings across with more, you know, more nuance,
Yeah.
more precision.
For sure. And that's something I noticed in this source material too.
Right.
Like even the simplest, most everyday actions, we could describe them in totally different ways depending on how fluent we are.
Yeah, it's true.
Remember how we were talking about eating lunch before? It's like at the beginner level, it's just eat lunch. You're just hungry.
Yeah.
But when you get more fluent, it becomes grabbing a quick bite, or even networking during lunch.
And that shift going from eating to networking is so interesting.
I know, right?
Because it shows how much more we understand about like social dynamics and professional etiquette, all that stuff. It's just built right into the language.
Yeah. Right. You're not just refueling your body, you're refueling your connections, your career, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not just about work either.
Right.
Even something like cleaning the dishes can change as we get more fluent.
Oh, for sure. Instead of just cleaning, you might say tidying up or organizing the kitchen, it becomes about more than just chores, you know?
Right. It's like you're not just doing chores, you're creating a space for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking of creating a space, I'm really interested in how this source material focuses on self-care.
Oh, yeah, me too. I thought that was so interesting.
It's there throughout all three routines, but I feel like it gets more intentional, I guess, as the skill level increases.
Yeah, it's woven into the language, for sure.
Yeah, like, you know, instead of just watching TV in the evening, it's reading a book or taking a relaxing bath.
Yeah.
It's all about recognizing that me time is important.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, as you get to that more advanced level, that's when the self-care becomes even more obvious, you know?
Right. Like people are really starting to own it at that point.
Yeah, totally. You see phrases like practice mindfulness or even engage in self-reflection or prioritize sleep. These things take effort and they're not always easy, you know?
Yeah.
But the language is almost like it's giving us permission to slow down, to take care of ourselves.
I love that.
I think it's a message that a lot of people need to hear these days.
Especially these days, right? Everybody's so busy and, you know, we forget about taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. It's so easy to get caught up in everything and forget about what we really need.
So as we're talking about self-care, it made me think about that word recharging that we kept seeing earlier.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
It was in all three routines, the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. But it had slightly different meanings each time.
It's true.
In the morning, it was like recharging with a cup of coffee.
Yeah, to get ready for the day.
Right, exactly. In the afternoon, it's recharging with a walk or something like that. And then in the evening, it's about disconnecting from screens or engaging in a relaxing activity. It's the same word, but it has all these different applications, you know?
Yeah, it's fascinating. It shows how even though we all need to recharge, we do it in different ways, right? We all have our own ways of doing it.
I wonder if our listeners have thought about their own recharging routine.
Me too. Yeah. Like, what are those moments for them?
Yeah, and how do they describe them, right?
Yeah.
Because even if we don't realize it, the way we talk about those routines, I think it tells us a lot about, you know, what we value, what we prioritize.
It really does. It's like a window into, you know, how we see ourselves, how we see the world.
Speaking of how we see ourselves, I'm curious to hear what our listeners think about this whole connection between language and mindset.
Me too. It's such a fascinating idea, right?
I mean, we've been talking about how our vocabulary can show where we're at with our fluency, how we approach self-care. I wonder if our listeners have noticed other patterns in their own language.
I know, right? Like, are there certain words they use that really reflect who they are or what their goals are, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, or how their language has changed as they've gotten older. Maybe their perspective on things has changed, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
It's such a cool thing to think about because language is so much more than just a way to, you know, pass along information.
Right. It's not just about, you know, getting the message across. It's how we express ourselves.
It's a way to show our identity, you know?
Yeah, totally.
It really shapes how we see ourselves in the world around us, you know?
It really does.
Which kind of brings up a really big question here. If language has the power to shape our perceptions, can we use it to create the experiences we want? Can we actually, like, make things happen with the words we choose?
Whoa. That's a big question. That makes me think about all those like really intentional phrases we talked about, like setting intentions, you know, or even visualizing success.
Cultivating gratitude.
Right.
Those are all about shaping our thoughts and feelings with words.
Exactly. It's like using words as tools to create a more positive mindset. You know?
Right. It's all about that inner voice.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
And if we can train that voice to be more encouraging, to be more positive, that's got to have an impact on our actions, right?
For sure. It's like we're programming our minds for success just by choosing the right words, you know?
Totally. It makes me think about this quote I read once. The words you speak become the house you live in. It's so true.
Oh, I love that. It really shows how much power our words have, you know?
And it makes me wonder how our listeners are using their words, right? are they being intentional, or are they just letting things happen, you know?
Yeah, like, are they choosing words that support their goals and their values?
Right.
Or are they kind of letting those negative thoughts take over?
Yeah.
It's something we all need to be mindful of, right?
Totally, because language is such a powerful tool. It can really help us change our lives for the better, you know?
Absolutely.
And as we go through this deep dive, I'm excited to see what else we can learn about how language connects to our everyday lives. You know, going through all these different phrases about our routines, I've noticed something kind of interesting.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It's like a shift from focusing on just tasks to focusing on experiences.
You're right. I see that.
Yeah, like at the beginner level, everything's very task-oriented, you know.
Yeah.
Make the bed, eat dinner, go to sleep.
Right, like checking things off a list, just getting it done.
Exactly. But then we get to the advanced level, the language gets, I don't know, more sophisticated, more about enjoying the process.
I like that, enjoying the process.
Instead of just having dinner, it's like enjoying a home-cooked meal or sharing a meal with loved ones. There's more feeling there, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's like we're appreciating the experience more.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about food either.
Right.
Like even work-related phrases, they change in the same way. At the beginner level, you might say work on a project. But at the advanced level, you're collaborating with colleagues or contributing your expertise.
Yeah, it's about finding meaning in what you're doing, not just getting it done.
And that makes me think about another really cool thing we've seen throughout all of this, mindfulness.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It pops up in all three routines, but it's really strong in that advanced vocabulary.
For sure.
We see things like take a mindful walk, practice gratitude, even engage in deep breathing exercises. It's like the words themselves are trying to get us to be more present, more intentional.
It's about slowing down, being in the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing to think about how much power our words actually have.
It really is, you know?
I mean, they can change how we think, how we feel, even what we do. So as we wrap up this deep dive into all this routine vocabulary, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Pay attention to the words you use.
That's good advice.
Yeah. Pay attention to how you talk about your routines, you know?
Because it matters.
It really does. Because those words, they're more than just descriptions.
They're like a reflection of who we are.
Exactly. They show our mindset, what we think is important, you know, our whole approach to life.
So what you're saying is if we choose our words carefully,
Yeah.
we can change our lives.
I think so. Yeah. I think we can actually create the experiences we want just by being mindful of the words we use.
That's powerful.
It is. So to all our listeners out there, go out and write your own story, you know?
I love that. Write your own story.
Choose your words wisely.
Yay!
Ever get that feeling you might be using a word wrong, but you're too afraid to ask?
Oh, yeah.
Well, fear no more. Because today we're diving deep into 15 words that even fluent English speakers mess up. We've got a YouTube script here all about leveling up your vocabulary. And you might be surprised by some of these common mistakes.
It is fascinating, though, how some of these errors stem from subtle distinctions that are easy to miss in casual conversation.
Okay, let's unpack this. We'll start with some beginner traps. Words that seem straightforward, but can be surprisingly tricky. I'll be honest, the word literally is one I hear misused all the time.
Yep.
Just the other day, someone told me they were literally dying from how much they had to do that week.
Yes. Literally seems to be a word that's been taken hostage by hyperbole.
So remind us, what should literally mean? Why is it important to use it correctly?
Literally means something actually happened, exactly as stated.
Yeah.
It emphasizes the reality of a situation, not an exaggeration.
Right.
While your friend might have felt overwhelmed, they weren't literally dying.
Right.
You see, using literally correctly, make sure your words carry their intended weight. It's about precision and clarity, especially in an age where misinformation can spread so easily.
That's a really good point. The impact on communication is huge. Okay, another beginner word that trips people up is unique. I once saw a store advertising a sale on very unique items. Something about that just felt off.
That's because unique means one of a kind.
Right.
Inherently special. It stands alone.
Right.
So adding modifiers like very or quite is redundant and actually weakens the impact of the word.
So instead of saying something is very unique, how can we highlight that specialness in everyday conversation?
Let the word unique speak for itself.
Okay.
You could say that painting is truly unique or her style is unique. You're emphasizing the inherent specialness without needing to qualify it further.
That's so interesting. I can see how that subtle shift makes a big difference. Even these beginner words have hidden depths. You really have to think about their true meaning.
Absolutely, and that's what makes language so fascinating. Now, prepare to have some assumptions challenged because some words have meanings completely different from what most people assume.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example of one of these words.
Let's start with irony.
Okay.
Many people confuse irony with simple coincidence or bad luck. For example, someone might say, "It's so ironic that I won the lottery and then got hit by a car."
So winning the lottery and then getting hit by a car, that's just bad luck, not irony.
Yeah.
What makes the situation truly ironic?
True irony involves a situation where the outcome is the opposite of what was expected, often with a humorous or sarcastic undertone. A classic example would be a fire station burning down. It's not just about unfortunate timing, it's about a surprising reversal of expectations.
Wow, that makes so much sense. It's not just about something bad happening. It's about the unexpected nature of the situation.
You see, understanding irony helps us analyze situations more deeply. It's not just about bad luck. It's about recognizing the unexpected and sometimes absurd nature of life.
Speaking of unexpected twists, let's talk about a word. Often misused in situations with high stakes. Alibis. I feel like I hear people using alibi as a synonym for any kind of excuse.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have a good alibi.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a common mistake. People might say, "I didn't finish the project, but I have a good alibi."
Wait, so if it's not just any excuse, what makes a real alibi? I'm genuinely confused.
An alibi has a very specific legal meaning.
Okay.
It refers to proof that someone was somewhere else at the time a crime was committed, demonstrating their innocence. It's not just any excuse. It's evidence that clears someone of suspicion.
So using alibi to explain why you didn't finish a project wouldn't really make sense.
Exactly. Using alibi in casual conversation when you simply mean excuse can actually undermine your credibility. It shows a lack of precision in your language.
Okay, this is making me rethink how I use these words. What other intermediate words are lurking out there, ready to trip us up?
How about a word that's often confused with its near opposite? Disinterested. Many people use disinterested to mean uninterested or bored. For instance, someone might say, "I was completely disinterested in that meeting."
Disinterested. If it doesn't mean bored or uninterested, then what does it actually mean?
Disinterested actually describes someone who is impartial or unbiased, free from personal stake or interest in a situation. A good example would be a judge who must remain disinterested in the outcome of a case.
Okay.
They can't be swayed by personal opinions or biases.
So if I wanted to say that I found the meeting boring, disinterested wouldn't be the right word to use.
Precisely. In that case, uninterested or bored would be more accurate.
Right.
Disinterested implies neutrality and objectivity. It's about being impartial, not uncaring.
I never realized how a single word could completely change the tone and meaning of a sentence. It's all about understanding those subtle but powerful nuances.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here to explore. Are you ready to be bemused by the next word?
Bemused. Okay, you've definitely got my attention. What's so tricky about this one?
People often think bemused means amused or entertained.
Okay.
You might hear someone say, "I was bemused by his silly jokes."
So if bemused doesn't mean amused, then what's the real meaning?
Bemused actually means puzzled, bewildered, or even slightly confused. Think of it as a state of mild perplexity, for example. You might be bemused by a riddle you can't solve, or a strange event you don't fully understand.
So it's not about laughing at a joke. It's about that feeling of, wait, what just happened? That makes a lot of sense.
Imagine someone watching a magic trick.
Right.
Their brow furrowed, a slight smile playing on their lips.
Yeah.
That's bemusement. It's not amusement,
Yeah.
but a fascinated perplexity.
Okay, now I'm really starting to understand the difference. Bemused is a much richer word than I realized. It's about that space between amusement and confusion.
Exactly. And these subtle distinctions can make a big difference in how your message is received. Are you ready for our final intermediate word?
Bring it on. I'm ready to tackle anything.
All right. Let's explore a word that's often misused to describe something grand or impressive. Enormity. People often use enormity to emphasize the sheer size or scope of something. You might hear someone say, I was overwhelmed by the enormity of the project.
That's how I usually use it. But I have a feeling it doesn't quite mean what I think it means. What's the real meaning?
While enormity can relate to size, its primary meaning leans towards something more serious and weighty.
Okay.
It often refers to extreme wickedness, outrageousness, or the sheer gravity of a situation.
Right.
Particularly in a moral or ethical context.
So it's less about physical size and more about the weight of the implications.
Precisely. For instance, if you were discussing a horrific crime, you might speak of the enormity of the act to emphasize its moral depravity and the severity of its consequences.
Wow, that puts the word in a whole new light. It's not just about something being big, it's about something being profoundly impactful, often in a negative sense.
Exactly. It's a word that carries a lot of weight, both literally and figuratively.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already. And I'm starting to feel the enormity in the true sense of the word, of all these linguistic nuances. What's next on our journey?
Next, we'll be venturing into the realm of advanced words, where the nuances become even more intricate. Are you ready to level up your vocabulary even further?
Absolutely. I'm eager to see what other linguistic gems await us in this deep dive into words.
Right.
It'd be great.
Awesome. Fasten your seatbelts, because these advanced words can be real brain twisters. They're the ones that often pop up in intellectual discussions or professional settings, and misusing them can unfortunately make you sound less credible.
Okay, I'm ready to face the advanced word challenge head on. Let's start with one that I've definitely struggled with in the past.
Decimate.
Decimate is fascinating because its common usage has drifted quite far from its original meaning. People often use it as a synonym for completely destroy, like saying the hurricane decimated the coastal towns. Yeah, I've definitely heard it used that way. But if it doesn't mean to completely destroy, then what does it actually mean?
Decimate has a very specific historical root. It comes from the ancient Roman practice of punishing mutinous troops by killing 1 out of every 10 soldiers. So the original meaning of decimate is to reduce by 1/10, not to obliterate completely.
Wow, I had no idea. That's a pretty grim origin story for a word. So using decimate to describe the total destruction of a town wouldn't be quite right.
Exactly. It's a case of hyperbole overtaking precision. While the impact of a hurricane can be devastating, it's unlikely to literally reduce a town's population by exactly 1/10.
This is why I love these deep dives. You uncover these hidden layers of meaning that we often miss in everyday conversation. It's like learning a secret code.
This word's bloody history reminds us that language carries the weight of the past. Even today, decimate suggests a severe calculated reduction, not total destruction.
Okay, what other advanced words are waiting to be decoded?
Let's tackle one that often gets misused in academic circles: peruse.
Peruse. I'll admit I've been guilty of using this one incorrectly myself. I always thought it meant to quickly skim through something.
That's a very common misconception. In reality, peruse means to read thoroughly and carefully. It implies a close and attentive examination of a text, not a hasty glance.
So if I said I perused the report before the meeting, it would mean I'd given it a very close read, not just skim the headings.
Precisely. Using peruse correctly conveys a sense of diligence and attention to detail. It suggests you've really absorbed the information.
This is another one of those aha moments. I'm realizing that using these advanced words correctly can signal a certain level of intellectual rigor. It shows you're not just skimming the surface.
Exactly. It's about choosing words that accurately reflect the depth of your engagement with the topic.
All right, bring on the next advanced word challenge. I'm feeling more and more confident with each one we tackle.
Let's see if you can crack the code on this one. Nonplussed.
Nonplussed. This one seems tricky. I've heard it used to describe someone who's calm and collected under pressure. Like, even though the presentation went wrong, she remained nonplussed.
That's a clever guess, but it's actually the opposite. Nonplussed describes a state of being surprised and confused, often to the point of speechlessness. It's that feeling of being caught off guard and unsure how to react.
Wow, so it's almost like being speechless with shock.
Exactly. Nonplussed implies a momentary loss of composure, a sense of being bewildered. It's that deer in the headlights feeling.
That makes so much more sense. I can see how misusing this word could lead to some awkward situations.
Indeed, it highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of these advanced words. They can have a big impact on how our message is perceived.
Okay, what other advanced word adventures await us? I'm ready to expand my vocabulary horizons.
Let's explore a word that often gets used in a way that diminishes its true impact: Plethora.
Plethora.
I usually think of this word as meaning a lot of something in a positive way. Like there was a plethora of fun activities to choose from at the festival. That's a common interpretation. But plethora carries a slightly different nuance. While it does mean an abundance of something, it often implies an excessive or overwhelming amount.
Okay.
It can sometimes even suggest a sense of burden or inconvenience.
Interesting. So it's not just about having a lot of something, it's about having maybe too much of it, like it's overflowing.
Precisely. Imagine a situation where you're bombarded with information or faced with an overwhelming number of choices. That sense of being inundated can be captured by the word plethora.
So if I were to say, I have a plethora of emails to respond to, it would imply that I'm feeling a bit swamped by them, not necessarily excited about having a full inbox.
Exactly. It's about that tipping point where abundance starts to feel like excess. It's about that too much of a good thing feeling.
I'm starting to see how using plethora correctly can add a layer of sophistication to my descriptions. It's a much more nuanced way of expressing abundance than just saying a lot.
It's about choosing words that convey not just the quantity, but also the impact of that quantity.
This is making me realize how much I've taken these words for granted, what other advanced words are hiding in plain sight, waiting to be understood.
Let's delve into one that's often misused in discussions about facts and information.
Factoid.
Factoid. This one seems pretty straightforward. I always thought it just meant a small or trivial fact.
That's how it's commonly used, but its original meaning is a bit more nuanced, even controversial. The term factoid was actually coined to describe something that appears to be a fact, but is actually false or unsubstantiated.
Right, really? That's a completely different meaning.
That's the risk with using factoid in its original sense. It implies a degree of skepticism or even doubt about the validity of the information being presented. It can be a way of highlighting that something may sound like a fact, but it hasn't actually been proven true.
This is a perfect example of how language can evolve and shift in meaning over time. It's important to be aware of both the common usage and the original intent behind a word. You're absolutely right. Language is a living, breathing thing that constantly adapts and changes. Our goal is to be aware of those changes and use words in a way that is both accurate and effective.
So how can we use factoid in a way that doesn't accidentally spread misinformation?
If you're unsure of the accuracy of a piece of information, it's best to avoid using factoid altogether. You could say something like, here's an interesting tidbit, or this might be a bit of trivia, but this avoids any implication that the information might be false.
That's really helpful advice. Okay, bring on the next advanced word. I'm ready to conquer some more linguistic complexities.
Let's tackle a word that often causes confusion in discussions and debates. Moot.
Moot? I've always thought of this word as meaning irrelevant or pointless. Like that argument is moot because the decision has already been made.
That's a common understanding, but it's not entirely accurate. While moot can relate to something that's no longer relevant, its original meaning is a bit more nuanced. It originally referred to a matter that is open for debate or discussion.
So if a topic is moot, it's not necessarily pointless. It just means there's room for further discussion or consideration.
Precisely. Imagine a legal case where the circumstances change, making the original point of contention no longer relevant to the outcome. The issue might be considered moot, not because it was unimportant, but because it's no longer central to the case.
That's a really helpful clarification. So it's less about the topic being irrelevant and more about its significance having shifted or diminished.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging that the context has changed, and the original point of debate may no longer be the primary focus.
I'm definitely feeling more enlightened than moot after tackling that one. What other advanced word adventures await us?
Let's wrap up our exploration of advanced words with a pair that often trips people up: infer and imply.
Infer and imply, the classic conundrum. I know these words are related to drawing conclusions, but I often mix them up.
It's a common confusion. The key difference lies in who is doing the action. The speaker or writer implies something, meaning they suggest or hint at something without stating it directly. The listener or reader infers something, meaning they draw a conclusion based on what is implied.
So if I were to say, it's getting late, I might be implying that it's time to go, even though I haven't explicitly said so.
Exactly. And if you, as the listener, understood my implication, you would have correctly inferred my meaning.
I see. So it's a two-way street. The speaker sends out a subtle signal, and the listener picks up on that signal and draws a conclusion.
Precisely. It's like a subtle dance of communication where meaning is conveyed through suggestion and interpretation.
This distinction is so subtle, but it's crucial for clear communication. Misusing these words can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings.
Absolutely. Mastering the difference between infer and imply is essential for navigating conversations and interpreting written texts accurately. It's about understanding both sides of the communication equation.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. It's amazing how much depth and complexity there is to these seemingly simple words.
And we've only just scratched the surface. But I hope you're starting to see how understanding the nuances of language can empower you to communicate with greater clarity and precision.
I'm definitely feeling a lot more confident about using these words correctly. It's like a whole new world of linguistic possibilities has opened up.
And that's the beauty of language learning. It's an ongoing journey of discovery and refinement. Are you ready for a quick challenge to test your newfound knowledge?
Absolutely. Bring it on. All right. Hit me with that word challenge. I'm ready to put my knowledge to the test.
Okay. Let's see if you can recall the true meaning of nonplussed. Without looking back at our discussion, take a moment to think about it.
Okay. No peeking. I think I've got it. Nonplussed means to be surprised and confused, almost to the point of speechlessness. It's like that feeling of being completely thrown off guard and not knowing how to react.
That's absolutely correct. You've successfully decoded nonplussed. It seems our deep dive has truly expanded your vocabulary horizons.
I'm feeling pretty proud of myself right now. This whole experience has been eye-opening. I've realized that using words correctly isn't just about sounding smart. It's about communicating effectively and ensuring that my message is understood.
It's about wielding the power of language with precision and care. Choosing words that accurately reflect not only what we want to say, but also the subtle nuances of meaning we wish to convey.
You know, it's funny because I used to think that vocabulary was just about memorizing definitions. But this deep dive has shown me that it's so much more than that. It's about understanding the history, the etymology, the subtle shades of meaning that make each word unique.
It's about recognizing that words are not static, but dynamic. They evolve over time, their meanings shifting and adapting to reflect the changing world around us.
And that's what makes language so fascinating. It's a living, breathing entity that connects us to the past, informs our present, and shapes our future.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I encourage you to continue exploring the fascinating world of language. Pay attention to the words you use, the words you encounter, and the way they impact your understanding of the world.
I know I will. This has been such a rewarding journey. I'm walking away with a newfound appreciation for the power of words and the importance of using them correctly.
Remember, language is a gift, a tool that allows us to connect, create, and inspire. Let's use it wisely.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
Happy wordsmithing. Okay, so let's be real for a sec. Small talk, right? It can be like the most awkward thing ever. Like when you're stuck in a situation and you know you should be chatting, but your mind just goes blank. Anyone else feel me on that? But get this. What if I told you that this deep dive could actually turn that dread into pure confidence? And we're going to do it using a source you'd never expect. A video script, get this, for people learning English.
I know, right? Sounds a little out there. But seriously, this script is full of stuff that goes way deeper than just language. It's like a secret masterclass in how humans connect, hidden inside an English lesson.
Okay, I gotta admit, when you first mentioned this source, I was kind of like, how can something for total beginners help someone who's already fluent?
That's fair, totally. But the cool thing here is, by breaking small talk down into these simple steps, it actually shows you the psychology behind how we connect. Like, it's a cheat sheet for building rapport, even if you never needed help with English in the first place.
So it's more about understanding the, deeper game, not just memorizing lines.
Exactly. For example, the script makes a big deal about greetings and weather talk, stuff we might think is just filler.
Yeah, I always thought that stuff was kind of pointless.
Right. But they actually serve a super important purpose. Like, humans are literally wired to bond over shared experiences.
Okay.
Even something as simple as complaining about the heat or, whatever the weather's doing.
Okay, yeah, I guess I can see that.
It creates that instant common ground, that we're in this together feeling, which is huge for starting any kind of connection.
Wow, that's actually so true. I never thought about it that way.
And the script goes even further. Instead of those boring old greetings like, "Hi, how are you?" it gives you phrases that fit the specific situation so you get a better response.
Oh, I like where this is going. Give me an example.
So say you're at a party. Instead of that robotic, "Hi, how are you?" try something like, "What brings you here?"
Way more interesting, right?
Way more. It's like you're actually interested, not just saying words. Exactly. It shows you're paying attention and they actually get to share something about themselves. It's what they call a strong bid in, like conversation analysis stuff. Each thing we say is a bid to connect.
Ooh, I'm digging this bidding concept. So we're all just out here trying to make the strongest bid to connect.
Totally. And this script is giving us all the winning moves. Another one they have is instead of just saying nice weather, you could say something like, this weather's crazy, right?
It's like inviting the other person in on the joke. I like it. So it's making small talk feel, I don't know, less robotic. But what really stood out to me was the role-playing part.
Ah, yes. That's where the magic really happens. The people who made this script, they get it. Knowing the right words isn't enough. You got to actually practice using them. And role-playing is the best way to do that.
But what if you don't have someone to practice with? Isn't that kind of, I don't know, weird to do alone?
For sure. But you can totally do it in your head. It's called mental rehearsal. Basically, you just picture yourself in different situations.
Hold on. So you're saying by just imagining myself rocking these small talk moments, I'm actually getting better at it in real life?
You got it. Might sound a little strange, but neuroscientists have found that when you rehearse something mentally, your brain fires up the same way it does when you're actually doing the thing.
No way. That's so cool. It's like training your brain for social situations, like a cheat code for confidence. I'm already feeling less terrified about networking events or, just parties in general.
It's crazy, right? How powerful our brains are. Like, this script really shows you how to use that power to, level up your social skills.
I like that, level up. So we've talked about greetings, weather talk, even practicing in your head. What else does this script have up its sleeve?
Okay, so one thing that really impressed me was the questions. They go way beyond those typical boring questions like, where are you from? Or what do you do? The usual suspects.
Yeah, those can be so snooze fest sometimes.
Right. Instead, they give you all these questions that are actually interesting, designed to spark real conversations.
Okay, I'm all about those real conversations. Tell me more. Give me the good stuff.
So instead of asking, what do you do? Which can feel kind of like a job interview, They suggest asking, what do you like to do for fun?
I mean, that's a classic for a reason, right? It gets people talking about what they're actually passionate about.
Exactly. It's like you're inviting them to show you their real selves, not just their LinkedIn profile. And if you really want to go deeper, you could try something like, what's the most interesting thing you've done lately?
Ooh, I like that one. It's like a sneak peek into their adventures. You might even discover you have some cool stuff in common.
Totally. Plus, it shows you're actually curious about them, not just trying to fill the silence. And they even have specific questions for different situations. Like, if you're at a dinner party, you could ask, have you tried any good restaurants lately?
Perfect. Everyone loves talking about food. Instant conversation starter, right there.
It's true. It's something we can all relate to, like enjoying a good meal. Okay, so we've covered greetings, weather talk, asking interesting questions, even mental rehearsal. But what about when you're ready to, make your escape? Does the script help with that too?
Yeah, like how do you end a conversation without being rude?
Don't worry, they got you covered. They have a bunch of different closing phrases depending on the situation. From a simple, it was nice talking to you, to something more like, hey, we should grab coffee sometime.
Oh, I love that they include those follow-up suggestions.
Yeah.
Sometimes you really do click with someone, and it's good to have a way to keep things going.
Exactly. It shows you're confident and interested, which is always a good look. And even if they can't meet up, it still leaves a good impression. They'll remember you as someone who actually wanted to connect.
Yeah, it's like planting a seed, right? You never know where those initial conversations might lead. What about those times when you just need a quick, casual exit, though, like you're running late or something?
No problem. They have those too. They suggest things like, catch you later or have a great day. Those are perfect for keeping it light and friendly without feeling like you have to, hang around forever.
Okay, so whether you're aiming for a lifelong friendship or just a quick chat, it sounds like this script has given us a whole toolbox for navigating the social world.
Yeah. It's like they took all the guesswork out of small talk and gave us a clear path to follow. It's pretty amazing.
And what's so cool is that this script, even though it's for people learning English, it actually shows us some really deep things about human connections, like a reminder that we all want to feel understood, even in those little everyday conversations.
So true. And I think that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. We're not just learning phrases, we're learning about what makes us human and how even a short conversation can make a difference, create a ripple effect.
It's like we're seeing the world through a whole new lens now, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us to the best part, putting it all into practice. We've talked about a lot today, the different phases of small talk, how to make a bid for connection, even practicing in your head. But now, it's your turn, dear listener. Take these ideas and make them your own.
Yes, this is where the real transformation happens. We've given you the tools, now it's up to you to use them. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. The goal isn't to become some kind of small talk robot.
Exactly. Be yourself, be genuine, and use these techniques to connect with people in a real way. So let's recap the top 3 things we've learned from this unexpected deep dive into, well, mastering small talk. First, small talk isn't just random. There's a structure you can follow to make those conversations flow.
Second, the words you use actually matter. This script has given us tons of phrases that are interesting, thoughtful, and perfect for different situations.
And third, practice, practice, practice. Whether you're practicing in your head or even role-playing with a friend, the more you do it, the more confident and natural you'll become.
It really is like freeing, right? Knowing you have these tools, it takes away that fear of like messing up or saying the wrong thing.
For sure. It's like having this, I don't know, secret weapon for social situations. And honestly, the biggest thing I'm taking away from this is small talk doesn't have to be something you dread. It can actually be like fun. A way to connect with people, you know?
100%. What about you? What's sticking with you from all this? What did you find most helpful from looking at this script?
You know, it's funny. I think what resonated most was realizing that everyone, even people who seem super outgoing, they've probably felt that awkwardness too. This script shows that small talk is a skill, like something you can learn and get better at, just like anything else.
Right. It's not like some people are born knowing how to do it and others aren't.
Exactly. It takes so much pressure off. You can just approach those conversations with curiosity, like a little game. Just see what happens.
I love that. A little game. It really can be like an adventure.
Yeah.
Discovering something new about someone, even if it's just a tiny thing.
And it reminds you that even those small moments, a quick chat, a smile, they can all make a difference. It's like we're all connected in this big web, and every conversation adds to that, you know?
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into, well, the surprisingly interesting world of small talk, I want to leave you with this. Think about the next time you are in a situation where you know there's going to be some small talk. Maybe it's a party or a work event, even just grabbing coffee. What are you most excited to try out from all the stuff we talked about?
Such a good question.
Yeah.
And hey, remember, it doesn't have to be perfect, okay? Just be yourself, be genuine, and see what happens. You might be surprised how fun and even meaningful those small conversations can be. So go out there and conquer the world of small talk. We believe in you. Okay, so have you ever, like, you know when you're trying to explain something? Mm-hmm. And you can't think of like the right word.
Right.
It's like, I want to say more than good, you know?
Yeah.
I want to like really capture how awesome this thing is, but good is all that's coming out.
For sure. For sure.
So I think that happens to all of us, right?
Totally. I think that's something we can all relate to.
So today we're going to look at how to like really level up our vocabulary.
Okay.
And we're going to be using this lesson that was designed to help people learning English.
Cool.
But this is for anyone who wants to like sound more interesting or who wants to write in a more compelling way.
Yeah.
So I think we can all benefit from this.
Definitely. I mean, who wouldn't want to expand their vocabulary and express themselves more effectively, right?
Exactly. So it's not about like becoming a walking thesaurus or anything like that.
No, not at all.
It's more about finding those perfect words to, you know, to really elevate our communication.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond just those basic labels and really getting to the heart of what makes something special or interesting or, you know, even controversial.
Right. And what are some of the mistakes you see people making when they're trying to use, you know, more advanced vocabulary?
Well, I think a common one is reaching for the most complex word they can find, thinking it'll make them sound smarter.
Oh, yeah.
But that often backfires.
Uh-huh.
The real skill is in choosing words that fit the context and convey the specific nuance you're going for.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So like this source we're looking at, they talk about the word good.
Okay.
And how you could say remarkable or exceptional or outstanding.
Right.
But like you wouldn't want to say like, oh, my lunch with my friend was outstanding.
Exactly. You know, outstanding implies something that really stands out from the crowd.
Yeah.
While remarkable might be a better fit for something that's, you know, simply worth noting.
Okay, so it's about choosing the right word for the situation.
Precisely. It's like having a toolbox full of different tools and knowing which one to use for each specific task.
Yeah, so it's more than just like grabbing the biggest word.
Exactly.
It's about being thoughtful about it.
Exactly. Thoughtfulness and precision. Those are key.
So this lesson also has like some exercises to help us internalize these new words.
Yes, it does. It offers several practical ways to really practice and integrate these words into your everyday language.
What are some of those?
Well, there's the classic fill in the blanks.
Okay.
Where you replace basic words with more interesting alternatives.
Gotcha.
So instead of saying like he had a good idea,
right,
you could say he had a brilliant idea.
Okay. And that just makes it
exactly
more vivid.
Yes, exactly. Brilliant conveys a sense of ingenuity and originality that good just doesn't capture.
Right. So you're not just like finding a longer word.
Right.
You're actually finding a more fitting word.
Exactly.
And that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it also has you rewrite sentences to use those new words.
Yes, that's another great exercise. It challenges you to think about how these words function in different contexts.
And I thought it was really cool they included this short story. That was written first with like basic words.
Right.
And then with more advanced vocabulary.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see the difference.
It really highlights the impact of word choice, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So this first sentence says, "The old house stood on a hill overlooking the town. It was a beautiful day and the sun was shining brightly."
Okay.
But then when they jazz it up with better words, they say, "The ancient manor perched atop the hill, casting a watchful gaze over the bustling town below. The day shimmered with an ethereal beauty, the sun's rays painting the landscape in hues of gold."
Wow, that's quite a transformation.
It is, right.
The second version is so much more evocative and immersive.
Yeah, and I just love how they did that.
It's amazing what a few well-chosen words can do.
Yeah, like ancient manor is so much better than old house.
Absolutely. It conjures up images of history and grandeur.
Yeah, and you can just like picture it.
Exactly. You can practically feel the weight of the centuries in that phrase.
Yeah, and then it says, "The day shimmered with an ethereal beauty," instead of just beautiful day.
Yes. It's like the words themselves are painting a picture.
Right. And that's what I'm always trying to do.
Of course.
But I'm like, how do I do that?
Right.
So this is really cool.
It's a great example of how vocabulary can elevate your writing.
So this is cool for writing, but like, what about just like talking or like sending an email or something?
That's where context comes in.
Okay.
You know, you wouldn't use the same language in a professional email as you would in a casual conversation with friends.
So we don't want to like sound like Shakespeare all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about being aware of your audience and the situation.
So we've seen that choosing the right word can make a big impact. But how do we actually like learn all these new words?
Well, luckily, this lesson provides some fantastic tips for expanding your vocabulary, and I think they'll be really helpful for our listeners.
Yeah, let's hear them.
Okay, let's dive in. So the first tip is to like read a lot.
Okay.
But they say don't just like read.
Nah.
Like when you see a word you don't know, like write it down or highlight it.
Okay, yeah, because I feel like I read stuff all the time.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting word.
Yeah.
But then I just keep reading.
Exactly, and it just goes in one ear and out the other.
Totally.
But when you actually take the time to write it down or highlight it, you're forced to really think about it.
Right. And then maybe even look it up.
Exactly. And that makes a big difference in terms of actually remembering the word.
It's like taking notes in class.
Yeah, it's like active learning versus passive learning.
So what's the next tip?
Okay, so this one's interesting. They say to use a synonym finder.
Okay.
But not just for single words, but for like whole phrases.
What do you mean?
So like, let's say you're writing and you say, "I had a really good time at the party."
Okay.
Instead of just looking up a synonym for good, you could plug that whole phrase into a synonym finder, and you might find something like, "I had a blast at the party."
Ooh, that's good.
Or, "The party was an absolute delight."
It just sounds more.
Exactly. It adds more flavor and personality to your writing.
So it's like you're not just swapping out one word.
Right.
You're finding like a better way to say the whole thing.
Exactly. And it can really help you break out of those writing ruts we all fall into.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then they say to like actually use the new words.
Yes. Practice is key.
Okay, but like I feel like if I try to use a word I just learned, it'll sound weird.
Well, it might feel a little awkward at first, but the more you use it, the more natural it will become.
So like just try to work it into conversations.
Exactly. You can also try writing practice sentences or even using it in your journal.
Okay, so just find ways to use it.
Exactly. So another tip is to immerse yourself in the language.
Okay, so like watch movies and stuff.
Yes. Watch movies, TV shows, listen to podcasts.
But we talked about how just like passively watching something
Right.
doesn't really help.
Exactly. You need to be an active listener.
Okay, how do you do that?
Pay attention to how native speakers use language.
Okay.
Like, what words do they choose? How do they express their emotions?
Yeah.
You know, really listen to the nuances of their speech.
So it's like I'm trying to learn something.
Exactly. Be a student of the language.
Oh, I?
And don't be afraid to pause and rewind if you hear a word or phrase you don't understand.
Gotcha. So I'm not just like vegging out.
Right.
I'm actually paying attention.
Exactly. You're turning entertainment into a learning opportunity.
I like that. And what's the last tip?
Okay, so the last one is all about review and revision.
Ooh, that's where I struggle.
Yeah, it's easy to learn new words and then forget them.
Totally.
So it's important to create a system for reviewing the words you've learned.
Okay, so like flashcards or something?
Exactly. Flashcards are great. You can also create your own vocabulary list and quiz yourself regularly.
Okay, and just like make sure I'm using the words.
Exactly. The more you use them,
Yeah.
the more likely you are to remember them.
So it's really about building good habits.
Exactly. Consistency is key when it comes to vocabulary growth.
I like that.
Um,
And like, what about finding people to talk to?
Yes, that's a great idea.
Like maybe a book club or something.
Absolutely. Surrounding yourself with people who share your love of language can be incredibly motivating.
And then they can like correct me if I use a word wrong.
Exactly. It's a supportive environment where you can practice and learn from each other.
I like that. So we're like building our own language toolbox?
Yes, exactly. And the more tools we have, the better equipped we are to communicate effectively.
I love that. And I'm curious, like, have you ever come across a word or phrase that just like blew your mind?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there have been so many, but one that really sticks out is from The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
Fitzgerald's use of language in that book is just so exquisite.
Oh, I love that book.
It's a masterpiece, and his descriptions are so vivid and evocative.
Yeah, you can just like feel the longing and the glamour.
Exactly. It's like you're transported right into that world.
Yeah, it makes you realize like how powerful words can be.
Absolutely. Words have the power to move us, to inspire us, to change us.
And we can all do that.
Exactly. We can all use language to create beauty and meaning in the world.
So for our listeners who are like ready to level up their vocabulary,
Yeah.
what's like the one thing they should keep in mind?
I would say embrace curiosity.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to experiment with language.
Yeah.
Have fun with it. Mm-hmm. And most importantly, don't be afraid to make mistakes.
That's good advice. I make mistakes all the time.
We all do. It's part of the learning process.
So it's okay to like sound silly sometimes.
Exactly. Just keep practicing and you'll get more confident over time.
Well, this has been so much fun.
It has been a pleasure chatting with you.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's always a joy to talk about language.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this vocabulary adventure.
Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep playing with words.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.